All right, welcome everybody. We're back with part 4 of Fantasy Football's finest mock draft series. Today we're going to be covering picks 16 through 20, which will be the Falcons, Cowboys, Dolphins with their second first-round pick, Raiders with their second first-round pick, and also the Jaguars with their second first-round pick. Joining me again today is Matt. I will have his mock draft posted up here somewhere.
It's a good one.
And I will also have mine up here, so anyone that's watching can get caught up. If not, you can watch our previous 3 videos. I'll have those links in the description below for everyone to check them out. So starting off with the 16th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. Matt, I'll let you take this one first with my team. The Atlanta Falcons are on the clock.
Yeah, Atlanta's one of the worst teams in the league, and they have a ton of holes. And I don't know where they're going to start to fill all those holes. There was talk this week about whether they're going to trade up and go after somebody. I don't exactly know who they might go after. Maybe you have thoughts on that. But looking, if they stay at 16 and looking at who they lost this year, they lost Desmond Trufant and they lost Vic Beasley. And this is not a deep draft for edge rushers. And a lot of people have this guy going to the Falcons, and I do too, and that's K'Lavon Chaisson. He's the best edge rusher in the draft. And I can't remember the last time the Falcons, not even during their Super Bowl run, did they have a fearsome pass rush. They had a ton of speed. I remember that about that team, particularly in the linebacker core. But I can't remember the last time they had a consistent pressure, and that has to wear on a GM. So I think the right choice is K'Lavon Chaisson.
Okay, I appreciate that. We did sign Dante Fowler in the offseason, who's coming off an 11.5 sack season. He's reunited with his former college defensive coordinator in Dan Quinn. So I really like him coming off the edge. I think he developed into a very talented pass rusher, especially learning under Wade Phillips over there in Los Angeles over the last couple of years. That being said, our pass rush has been terrible. Vic Beasley, outside of that 2016 magical season where he led the league in sacks, we have not had anything. We got a guy like DeCarson McKinley to pair with him, and even he's a good pass rusher, gets a quarterback, creates a lot of hurries, and he's very good in the run game. But he is yet to really find his home at getting to the quarterback. K'Lavon Chaisson, I think he's a good talent. But to me, he's another Vic Beasley type. He's 1-year production coming out of college. He's very fast. He's very talented. And he's a project. I don't want to take him because I don't want to be sitting here where he has one magical season. You get all hyped up about him, and then that's it. I think the Falcons, if they stay here, there's talk about them moving up to maybe get a corner because that's a huge need. We could grab a corner here, but I think there's a lot of depth at the position. We have a second-round pick where I think we can get a corner there. But honestly, when I think of Dan Quinn and Dan Quinn's defense, I think obviously back to Seattle, and one of his most heralded linemen was Michael Bennett. He is a versatile guy who can play the outside, set the edge, come inside on passing situations and beat up on those guards and centers and really get to the quarterback, which is why I think they take a guy like A.J. Epineza, defensive end from Iowa. I think he's very versatile. He can set the edge at end, running situations, and he's a big body guy, so you can move him inside on passing downs and let him beat up on those guards and centers in the NFL on passing situations. People say that his combine wasn't great. He didn't have a lot of good measurables, but put the tape on, man. He's at Iowa. He's playing in, against Penn State. He's playing against Ohio State, playing against Minnesota, and he really ate those teams up. I think he set a record for most tackle for losses throughout his career at Iowa. He's a really talented guy. I like his tape better than his measurables, but we'll see what happens from there.
That's a good pick. I have him going a little bit later, but not too much later. It's one of those, we give cornerbacks who play well in the SEC more credit. We give quarterbacks who play in the SEC more credit. we have to give defensive linemen who play in the Big Ten more credit because they're
Hmm.
going up against the best offensive linemen in the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think, you mentioned that let's not get hyped up on Caleb on Chason, but you just got hyped up on Dante Fowler after one good year. I think there's a reason why he's on three different salary cap, notwithstanding with the Rams, but there's a reason why he's on three different teams in 3 years. And if you can get a guy who you know you're going to have for 4, maybe 5 years, that may not have the headaches that come with Fowler and the salary that Fowler might command, then I think the Falcons are probably going to want to take that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree with you there. Moving on next, we have the Dallas Cowboys, who got a new head coach, your former head coach.
That's right.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy's come into town. He's brought some guys with him. I'm surprised that he didn't sign Randall Cobb, but brings over HaHa Clinton Dix, which was one of his first round draft picks a couple years ago. So they really kind of shored up the secondary as far as the back end. And I think the Cowboys go with the corner here. I think they take C.J. Henderson with Byron Jones going off to Miami. I know you have him going a little bit higher. He's still available on my board. So I think the Cowboys replace Byron Jones with a very comparable quarterback, great in man coverage, willing tackler, and like you said in our last video, one of the most talented corners in the draft, possibly even better than Okuda.
What the Cowboys are going to do this year is going to be fascinating because McCarthy just refused to run the ball in Green Bay. And this team has, for 5 years now, been building to be a run-first team. And they've lost some talent on the offensive line, so there is thought that they might go there. I think on a defense that stunk last year and held them back and kept them out of the playoffs, and a secondary that, as you mentioned, lost Byron Jones and just got burned all the time. I agree that they have to go corner here because both Okuda and Henderson are off my board. I have them taking Christian Fulton from LSU, who a lot of people are saying is the most. He may not be the flashiest, but he's the most well-rounded of
Absolutely.
the corners. And if you're, the point a couple minutes ago, that we give credit to certain players in certain conferences. If you're going up against all those guys at Alabama, like Fulton did, and against any of the number of talented players in the SEC, and you still perform that well, and you're still a shutdown corner, I think that says a lot about your talent. There's also, everybody's saying that he's a team leader too, which is something that defense needs. They always say that Sean Lee is like the leader of that defense, but Sean Lee is a terrible player. I think he's so overrated. I don't know why people still bring him up. They need fresh blood on the defense, and getting a cornerstone at the cornerback position is a good start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you there. Sean Lee, I always liked him, but he can't stay healthy. But even without him, the Cowboys have one of the best 4-3 linebacking squads in the entire NFL. Leighton Vander Esch was hurt all year last year. Jalen Smith has just been tearing it up since
Smith's a good player.
he's gotten into the league. But defensive line, you got DeMarcus Lawrence there. They could go edge rusher here to pair with DeMarcus Lawrence, but you sign Dontari Poe and Gerald McCoy in the offseason at defensive tackle. So, I mean, the door's open for a corner right there. You signed a safety, you got your linebackers and your defensive line. So just get a corner here and shut the door on it.
I mean, as a guy who had to sit through Clinton Dix blowing assignments, and I can't believe that Mike McCarthy still trusts Clinton Dix. I mean, there's a reason why they basically traded him out for Adrian Amos. Green Bay traded him out for Adrian Amos last year, is because he makes enough plays and he shows up on enough tape to say, oh, this is a really good safety, but he blows as many plays as he makes. And I can't believe that Mike McCarthy didn't let that affect the decision. I know Jerry Jones is making decisions, but you'd have to assume that Mke McCarthy had a hand in it.
Well, I'm glad that not everyone's judging based on their previous performances because, I mean, if I were Jerry Jones, I probably wouldn't have hired Mike McCarthy after his last 3 seasons in Green Bay. But that's neither here nor there. Next up, we have
what is your quick take on how many wins the Cowboys have next year?
the Cowboys have. I like the Cowboys. I honestly like Mike McCarthy. I wanted Dan Quinn to stay in Atlanta, but if he were to get fired, I would have wanted Mike McCarthy. I think that Mike McCarthy project that they had on ESPN or NFL Network,
Yeah.
the guy, he put in the time. He wants to be a coach. He wants to redeem himself, I believe, for winning a Super Bowl and then just kind of letting everything else tail off from there. Over under, I probably set it at 10 for the Cowboys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think all the pieces are in place. I think McCarthy is a really good coach. I think time had just run out on
Yeah.
that relationship with Rodgers and that relationship with that team. And you can look and say, well, LaFleur came in and won 13 games and got a second seed. So really, what was McCarthy doing? I think that just goes to the point that it was just time for a change.
Yeah. Things got stale and you need to move on. Throw the bread out and get a new loaf. That's it.
I like that.
So, Matt, we'll put you next up with the Dolphins with their second of their 3 first-round draft picks.
Yeah, so I have them taking Tua with their first pick, and I just can't see a scenario um, where they don't see the value of and the ceiling that Tua represents. So I have them taking that, taking him there, and then for for their second pick, I think they're gonna. This is where I have Tristan Wirfs going, and it's very possible that Wirfs is gone. At the
I mean, this is all speculation, so
pick
we
10.
don't know what's going to happen, but these are where we put the dominoes.
Right, but they lost Tunsil, they lost Jawan James. They need to fortify that, and if they don't, then what was the plan all along?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and you can make the argument that they have a lot of holes, and surely they do. But this is a cornerstone piece that you need on your offense, and Wirfs is a player that's projected to play well for a decade. So if the more I look at it, the more I find it a little bit unfeasible for Wirfs to fall to the 18th spot, just from everything that we're hearing. But if he does, the Dolphins, I think, would jump at the chance to take him.
Yeah, for sure. I agree they go tackle. With their first overall draft pick, I had them taking Jedrick Wills out of Alabama. And this is kind of part of my rebuilding process for the Dolphins. I mean, their offensive line was just terrible. So if you're going to get a quarterback of the future in this draft, you need to protect him. So my step 2 is just getting 2 bookend tackles that you could plug and play and protect your passer. You got Jordan Howard at running back. Even the Dolphins could take another running back in the second round, but here I have them taking Andrew Thomas, who's still available on my board. Now you have 2 guys at both tackle positions that are just ready to go. They're good in the run game, good in the pass game, and you have your next starting tackles if you can keep them both re-signed for a decade. If not, when you look at teams that have had success over the last season, especially, look at the Green Bay Packers, Balaga, Bakhtiari. You look at the San Francisco 49ers, you had Staley and McGlinchey, and so many other teams. You got to have good tackle play. Even the Raiders with Trent Brown and Colton Miller. Raiders surprisingly had one of the best offensive lines in the league last year, but you got to be able to protect the passer. It's a quarterback-driven league, and you got to be able to run the ball and set the edge. So I think the Dolphins getting 2 bookend tackles. I believe that you don't need to reach for a quarterback in this draft because there's a lot of good depth, which I'll finish up with in my 3rd pick for the Dolphins in the first round. But I have them taking Andrew Thomas at tackle out of Georgia here. Next, we got the Las Vegas Raiders. Which I know this is still going to be tough. With their second of their 2 first-round draft picks, we both had them go wide receiver with their first pick. So I think they plug up their next biggest hole, which will be corner. I like the kid out of Utah here, Jalen Johnson. I think he's a really good man-to-man corner. I think he fits that scheme really well. You pair him with a guy like Trayvon Mullen, who they drafted last year from Clemson, and he's just a guy that you just have matchup against either the number one or number two, wherever you see him. Once you get a real analysis on him and see him in camp, you can really – sorry, the dogs are freaking out. But, he's really good. He's instinctual. He plays the run really well. He's a willing tackler. The Raiders could go defensive tackle here, but they signed Malik Collins. So I don't – you pair him with Maurice Hurst, and I think you got pretty good defensive line there. So I like corner here at Raiders.
Yeah, I'm thinking they're going to go defense here after going wide receiver with their first pick. Mayock and Gruden really like football players, and if you look at the depth of certain positions, it may not be one of their priority need positions. But I think they're going to go with Kenneth Murray, linebacker from Oklahoma here.
I like that.
Because he's so versatile.
Mm-hmm.
He can play. He's so rangy. He can play in a 3-4. He can play in a 4-3. You can put him in multiple positions. And there is some talk about the Raiders being interested in him. And then after Murray, you have Queen, and that's about it. Maybe
that kid Bond.
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
Maybe you could talk about him, and maybe later in the first round. And you could argue whether Murray or Queen is the better prospect. I think you have Queen a little bit higher. Queen is a guy that you see all over the draft board on mock drafts.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's Murray because of his adaptability and his versatility. And I think for a GM and a coach that appreciate football players more than anything, and that surprised a lot of people by taking Farrell at 4 last year.
Yeah.
Aren't going to be afraid to rock the boat to get a guy who can make an immediate impact on defense.
Mm-hmm. I love Murray out of Oklahoma. I think he's probably the best linebacker in the draft, even though that I have Queen going ahead of him. I think he's honestly like the modern era of Patrick Willis. He's very fast. He's very good in between the tackles of stopping the run, and he's a sideline to sideline guy. I love that pick for the Raiders there. The only reason I didn't have them taking a linebacker is because they signed Corey Littleton, and I'm going to butcher this, but Nick Kwiatkowski. So they shored up their linebacker position with those two. They could very well get another linebacker. I think either way, they have to go defense with one of their first two first-round picks. Yeah, I mean, why not? You go offense, defense. This way you get two nice new toys for both of your coordinators to play around with.
Yep.
All right, so next we have the Jacksonville Jaguars finishing up our part 4 here. You're up.
So with I toyed with the Jaguars taking one of those top offensive tackles in the first round and end up going with Javon Kinlaw because I think there's a greater need there, and the talent to fill that need is greater. I think they go Josh Jones, the tackle from Houston here, and because after that it just totally
it's a drop off.
It totally drops off. He's a super athletic tackle who I think people are saying is a little bit of a project. But Gardner Minshew is a project. That whole team is a project.
Yeah.
And you can maybe wait until next year and hope that there's another prospect that might project as well as Jones, or you can just take him now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Jaguars do that.
I like that. Also, Gardner Minshew, as you and I were talking off camera, he's pretty good in the pocket. So he can scramble a little bit too. So having an athletic tackle who can move around and keep on his blocks even when the quarterback breaks outside the pocket is pretty important. I like that pick. I actually don't have Josh Jones going in my first round, but I do like him. I think we're seeing a bit of a changing of the guard when it comes to offensive linemen. Offensive coordinators, at least in high school, they usually build their teams around, whatever talent they have. And if you have a weak offensive line, then you're usually running like a zone scheme. But now you're seeing that with the success of Kyle Shanahan and everything like that. And you're seeing these
Yep.
more athletic linemen who can run fast. They're strong. They're big. Before they were just like Jonathan Ogden, 6'8", stone wall. You're not getting past me because I pushed you. Like that's it.
Right.
But now you have to deal with these super crazy fast defensive ends and linebackers. So I do like that pick with Josh Jones. For
The
me,
Falcons with Dan Quinn and coming from Seattle's system, they built their team around speed, and they lost their size in the linebacking core.
yeah,
And even a guy like Aaron Donald, who has a ton of size, obviously, but is also really quick. You have to adapt then on the offensive side, and certainly there will be a reaction to that
of
again
course.
coming
Yeah.
in the next 5 years.
Yeah. It's Newton's law, right?
That's right. Science.
Yeah, it's science. Football is science. That's all you need to know. So I had the Jaguars taking someone that you had going to, I think it was the Cowboys, Christian Fulton.
Uh-huh.
So he's my favorite corner in the draft. Like you brought up, he's going against guys at Alabama. He's going against these wide receivers in the SEC, and he handled them pretty well. He is athletic. He's got good ball skills. Honestly, I mean, he reminds me of a guy that played at that school. He reminds me a lot of Patrick Peterson. He doesn't have the return skills as Patrick Peterson, but I think he's a great man-to-man corner that, you put on another team's number one, and you just shut him down.
They lost AJ Bouye to the Broncos, which we didn't mention Broncos talk, but they have a distinct need there, so I could definitely see them. I originally had them taking maybe somebody at the corner position there, but they have some distinct needs, and tackle and defensive line and corner are certainly up there for them.
Yeah, especially after trading Jalen Ramsey midway through the season, which was a bit of a shocker.
Yeah,
but the Rams made out in that deal. I think they're getting a generational talent. But
I think so.
Apparently they're having a hard time paying their players right now. So who knows what's going on with LA?
I think we all saw that coming.
Yeah. So that's going to round out Series 4 in our mock draft series with picks 16 through 20. Matt, I just want to say thank you very much for being a part of this, and hopefully we can continue this conversation in the future.
It's my pleasure. I think the picks are going to start to get really interesting once we get into the 20s.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For a note of those who actually are watching this video, our league, Fantasy Football's Finest, will be hosting a live mock draft. I will try and record some of it and put some of the highlights up, but we'll pretty much just be drinking and doing a live mock draft. And so hopefully you guys will get a kick out of that. If not, you'll just see a bunch of drunk idiots talking about football. So Matt, once again, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll catch you next time.
Got it. Take care.
All right.